Hello. 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 For as long as I can remember, I've felt different. I've felt weird. I've felt unique. And the businesses that I've started 30 years into my life have somehow represented the same things I felt when I was a little kid. You see, I wasn't an outgoing kid. I didn't have a lot of friends. I moved around a lot of change. I pretty much stuck to my sketchbook, reading Calvin and Hobbes. And then I started to realize that I wasn't like everybody else. I wasn't always this big, although I still was not like everybody else growing up. I found that I didn't really fit into what society told me I should be doing. But I also didn't find this out until about 30 years into my life. I went to college, I got a degree, I got a job. I hated it. Every day I sat in a cubicle, and I felt like I was completely out of place. And one day, I just happened to pick up a little purple book by Seth Godin called Purple Cow. And I read this book, and I think I was like 3 pages in, and I said, an expletive. But I said, this is me. The expletive fits somewhere in the middle of that. You can pick your favorite one, have your own story, choose your adventure. It took me quite a while at that moment of saying, this is me, to make a change, to do something. And the first thing I did, like any entrepreneur would do, is I said, what is the skill that I have? What is something intrinsically that I can do? I had this graphic design degree. Oh, maybe I'll start a design company with a friend. Had no idea how to do that, didn't know anything. So I started this company. It was fun. I worked from home. I quit my job, by the way. I didn't do these at the same time. I took this big risk. I worked from home, putting on sweatpants every day. Most days, actually, not putting on sweatpants. But those are the joys of working for yourself. Now, none of that's really that unique or interesting, right? So we heard about the recession of 2008. Well, I had an amazing idea. As I got up one morning, looked in my closet and said, what t-shirt do I want to wear today? This was probably the hardest decision I could make every day working for myself. What t-shirt to put on, or put one on at all. Wasn't going with pants. We already discussed this. And I looked at all these t-shirts and I said, holy crap, there are companies on every one of these shirts that I'm basically paying to walk around and then promote. What if I did that? What if I wore a shirt for a company, asked them to pay me, and did this? And it was at that moment when I decided that me, being a nobody from Florida in my closet, would have a business idea. An idea that would turn into a company called iwearyourshirt.com during the recession, where I asked companies from around the world to pay me to wear t-shirts for a living. Yeah. This idea didn't exactly launch with amazing fanfare. I reached out to people, one person included, to see if I could get their permission to do this. That person was Seth Godin, whose book I'd read a couple years prior. And I told him about this idea, and he said, that's not a bad idea, kind of been done before. I don't think it'll necessarily work, but good luck to you. Number one, it was awesome to hear back from him. But number two, that was the fuel that I needed to move forward. That was what drove me to go from 12 people visiting the site on the first day, thank you, Mom, Grandma, the developer of the site, me probably 8 times, to growing that business into $1 million revenue-generating business. That is not a joke. I got paid over $1 million to wear t-shirts for a living for 5 years. I did it through hard work. I did it through adversity. I did it without knowing anything at all about, well, I knew how to wear a t-shirt. That was the easy part. But I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to use social media, which is how I was promoting these companies. I didn't know how to make videos, but yet I made a video every single day of my life for almost 1,000 days straight. Every single day I wore a different shirt and told a different story. So that's kind of unique, right? This is an interesting idea. But at the end of it, because I didn't have a lot of business experience, I ended up $100,000 in debt. I ran a business that I didn't really know how to run properly. I bought things that I probably shouldn't have bought and paid for things and had employees, and I started to try and grow and scale the business, because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what society tells you. You're successful if you can grow and make more money. And so I kept trying to grow, and every time I tried to grow, I would fail a little bit more. And over time, I ended up at this place where I was $100,000 in debt. Now, right before that happened, my mom went through a divorce. And this was my 3rd last name at that time, and the circumstances of the divorce kind of sucked. I'm not going to drag you guys through the circumstances. That would be weird. But it left me sitting here going, I'm 4 years into this I wear your shirt business. I now have a last name that I don't want. What do I do? How do you find a new last name? I looked for a white pages to flip through. Didn't have one. I don't know who still does. And I decided, what if I sold my last name? I told you this was going to get weird. I took that idea from, wow, you probably shouldn't do this because I Googled it and no one had done it before. By the way, Googling how do you sell your last name doesn't bring up very many results whatsoever. But I built a website, which is pretty much how I start every business, and buymylastname.com was born. I put up an auction for my last name starting at $0. 24 hours into the auction, the bidding was up to $30,000. Again, I told you this was going to get weird. By the end of that auction, I was Jason Headsetsdotcom. Yes, you're allowed to laugh at that. I had made $45,000, and I had somewhat of a new identity. For 1 year, I would represent this last name. I changed it legally, went to the courthouse. The judge put the stamp on it. Very awkward. But I did this. But I was still also in debt. I was still also feeling lost. And so I went to lunch with a friend of mine, and he said, Jason, you need to write about all these things you've done. You need to write a book for entrepreneurs to learn from all the mistakes you made, all the things you've done. And I'm like halfway through a burrito, and I'm like, no, I'm sad, and I don't want to do that. That's my eating a burrito talking face. Also, he paid for the burrito, thankfully. I had no money whatsoever, even though I sold my last name, no money. And it was during that meal that he gave me the permission, and I gave myself the permission to say, sure, I should write a book about this. But I'm going to do it in an interesting way, because if you haven't been able to figure out, I don't like convention. I don't like doing things the way that normal people do them. I emailed a couple friends when I got home from that lunch, and I said, hey, you've written books. What does it take to get a book deal, to make all this money up front for writing a book? I wanted to be the next J.K. Rowling, right? I had this book in me. And I started emailing these friends, and they said, you'll never make money as a first-time author. You're just going to write the book. It'll be marketing for whatever your business is. No, thank you. I realized I'm pretty good at getting sponsorships for things. My last name, the t-shirts that I wore, I had a sponsored road trip, a fitness challenge, my dog even wore sponsored shirts. That was not my choice, by the way. The community that I had told me to do it. I let them talk me into these things. You saw the community video earlier. It can be very powerful. But I decided to write this book and get sponsors. And to prove all these people wrong in the whole industry, because 94% of first-time authors don't make a single dollar on their book, I was able to get 204 companies to sponsor my book. I raised $75,000 before writing a single word of the book. And it's because I've been able to look at all these different ways of doing things and see beyond the boundaries that other people see. Because those boundaries are just set by other people who are like me. Other people who have opinions, who have fears, who have thoughts, who have doubts. I have all of those things. But I want those results more than I'm afraid of what it takes to get them. And I've learned with every one of these projects, everything I've done as an entrepreneur, that I'm going to mess up. I'm going to have things go wrong. I'm going to get in debt. I'm not going to be able to pick out a t-shirt very easily now anymore because I had one dictated for years. But it's through all of those things that I've become who I am today, which is Jason Zook, an entrepreneur, a writer, a guy who's had multiple last names, a guy who's wore a lot of t-shirts, and someone who just likes doing things differently. And the thing that I have seen over all these ideas, the one thing that threads them all together is exactly what's on the pamphlet that you read, is that you don't get what you don't ask for. If I didn't ask for these things, I never would have gotten them. I still don't know how I got that last name thing done. Like, that's amazing that that still worked out. But I want to present that to you guys. What's something you're afraid of in your life that you want to ask for, but you haven't? I challenge you to ask for something in 10 minutes, in an hour, tomorrow, this month, that you're afraid of asking for, but you really want. Because again, you don't get what you don't ask for. Thank you.